Chapter 67. Wedlock, Marriage, Nikaah. Chapter 1. Awakening the Desire for Marriage. Narrated Anas bin Malik. A group of free men came to the houses of the wives of the Prophet, asking how the Prophet worshipped Allah, and when they were informed about that, they considered their worship insufficient and said, "Where are we from the Prophet, as his past and future sins have been forgiven?" Then one of them said, "I will offer the prayer throughout the night, forever." The other said, "I will fast throughout the year. I will not break my fast." The third said, "I will keep away from the woman and will not marry forever." Allah's messenger came to them and said, "Are you the same people who said so and so? By Allah, I am more submissive to Allah and more afraid of Him than you. Yet I fast and break my fast. I do sleep and I also marry a woman. So he who does not follow my tradition in religion is not from me, not one of my followers." Narrated Urwa that he asked Aisha about the statement of Allah, "If you fear that you shall not be able to deal justly with the orphan girls, then marry other women of your choice, 2 or 3 or 4. But if you fear that you shall not be able to deal justly with them, then only 1, or the captives that your right hands possess. That will be nearer to prevent you from doing injustice." For 3, Aisha said, "O my nephew, this verse has been revealed in connection with an orphan girl under the guardianship of her guardian, who is attracted by her wealth and beauty and intends to marry her with a mahr less than what other women of her standard deserve. So such guardians have been forbidden to marry them unless they do justice to them and give them their full mahr, and they are ordered to marry other women instead of them." Chapter 2. Whoever is able to marry should marry. Narrated Al-Qama. While I was with Abdullah, Uthman met him at Mina and said, "O Abu Abdurrahman, I have something to say to you." So both of them went aside, and Uthman said, "O Abu Abdurrahman, shall we marry you to a virgin who will make you remember your past days?" When Abdullah felt that he was not in need of that, he beckoned me to join him, saying, "O Al-Qama." Then I heard him saying in reply to Uthman, "As you have said that, I tell you that the Prophet once said to us, 'O young people, whoever among you is able to marry should marry, and whoever is not able to marry is recommended to fast, as fasting diminishes his sexual power.'" Chapter 3. Whoever is not able to marry is recommended to fast. Narrated Abdullah. We were with the Prophet while we were young and had no wealth whatever. So Allah's messenger said, "O young people, whoever among you can marry should marry, because it helps him lower his gaze and guard his modesty, yet his private parts, from committing illegal sexual intercourse, etc. And whoever is not able to marry should fast, as fasting diminishes his sexual power." Chapter 4. About marrying several women. Narrated Atta. We presented ourselves along with Ibn Abbas at the funeral procession of Maimuna at a place called Sarif. Ibn Abbas said, "This is the wife of the Prophet, so when you lift her by her, do not jerk it or shake it much, but walk smoothly, because the Prophet had 9 wives, and he used to observe the night turns with 8 of them, and for one of them there was no night turn." Narrated Anas. The Prophet used to go around have sexual relations with all his wives in one night, and he had 9 wives. Narrated Sa'id bin Jubair. Ibn Abbas asked me, "Are you married?" I replied, "No." He said, "Marry, for the best person of this Muslim nation, yet Muhammad of all other Muslims had the largest number of wives." Chapter 5. Whoever emigrated with the intention of marrying a woman. Narrated Umar bin al-Khattab. The Prophet said, "The rewards of deeds are according to the intention, and everybody will get the reward for what he has intended. So whoever emigrated for Allah's and his apostle's sake, his emigration was for Allah and his apostle. And whoever emigrated for worldly benefits, or to marry a woman, then his emigration was for the thing for what he emigrated for." 1. Chapter 6. The marrying of a poor man. Narrated Ibn Masud. We used to fight in the holy battles in the company of the Prophet, and we had no wives with us. So we said, "O Allah's Messenger, shall we get castrated?" The Prophet forbade us to do so. Chapter 7. The saying of a man to his brother in Islam. Narrated Anas bin Malik. Abdurrahman bin Auf came from Mecca to Medina, and the Prophet made a bond of brotherhood between him and Sa'd bin Arabi al-Ansari. Al-Ansari had 2 wives, so he suggested that Abdurrahman take half, his wives and property. Abdurrahman replied, "May Allah bless you with your wives and property. Kindly show me the market." So Abdurrahman went to the market and gained in bargains some dried yogurt and some butter. After a few days, the Prophet saw Abdurrahman with some yellow stains on his clothes and asked him, "What is that, O Abdurrahman?" He replied, "I had married an Ansari woman." The Prophet asked, "How much mar did you give her?" He replied, "The weight of 1 date stone of gold." The Prophet said, "Offer a banquet, even with 1 sheep." Chapter 8. What is disliked of not marrying and of getting castrated. Narrated Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas. Allah's Messenger forbade Uthman bin Mas'ud to abstain from marrying and other pleasures, and if he had allowed him, we would have gotten ourselves castrated. Narrated Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas. The Prophet prevented Uthman bin Mas'ud from that not marrying, and had he allowed him, we would have got ourselves castrated. Narrated Abdullah. We used to participate in the holy battles led by Allah's Messenger, and we had no wives with us, so we said, "Shall we get ourselves castrated?" He forbade us that and then allowed us to marry women with a temporary contract too, and recited to us, "O you who believe, make not unlawful the good things which Allah has made lawful for you, but commit no transgression." 587. Narrated Abu Hurairah. I said, "O Allah's Messenger, I am a young man, and I am afraid that I may commit illegal sexual intercourse, and I cannot afford to marry." He kept silent, and then repeated my question once again, but he kept silent. I said the same for the 3rd time, and he remained silent, then repeated my question for the 4th time, and only then the Prophet said, "O Abu Hurairah, the pen has dried after writing what you are going to confront, so It does not matter whether you get yourself castrated or not. Chapter 9. To marry virgins. Narrated Aisha. I said, O Allah's Messenger, suppose you landed in a valley where there is a tree of which something has been eaten, and then you found trees of which nothing has been eaten. Of which tree would you let your camel graze? He said, I will let my camel graze of the one of which nothing has been eaten before. The sub-narrator added, Aisha meant that Allah's Messenger had not married a virgin beside herself. Besides. Narrated Aisha. Allah's Messenger said to me, You have been shown to me twice in my dreams. A man was carrying you in a silken cloth and said to me, This is your wife. I uncovered it, and behold, it was you. I said to myself, If this dream is from Allah, He will cause it to come true. Chapter 10. The Marrying of Matrons. Narrated Jabir bin Abdullah. While we were returning from a Ghazwa, holy battle, with the Prophet, I started driving my camel fast. As it was a lazy camel, a rider came behind me and pricked my camel with a spear he had with him, and then my camel started running as fast as the best camel you may see. Behold, the rider was the Prophet himself. He said, What makes you in such a hurry? I replied, I am a newly married. He said, Did you marry a virgin or a matron? I replied, a matron. He said, Why didn't you marry a young girl so that you may play with her and she with you? When we were about to enter Medina, the Prophet said, Wait so that you may enter Medina at night, so that the lady of unkempt hair may comb her hair, and the one whose husband has been absent may shave her pubic region. Narrated Jabir bin Abdullah. When I got married, Allah's Messenger said to me, What type of lady have you married? I replied, I have married a matron. He said, Why don't you have a liking for the virgins and for fondling them? Jabir also said, Allah's Messenger said, Why didn't you marry a young girl so that you might play with her and she with you? Chapter 11. The marrying of young lady to an elderly man. Narrated Urwa. The Prophet asked Abu Bakr for Aisha's hand in marriage. Abu Bakr said, But I am your brother. The Prophet said, You are my brother in Allah's religion and His book, but she, Aisha, is lawful for me to marry. Chapter 12. What type of woman should one seek in marriage? Narrated Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, The best women are the riders of the camels and the righteous among the women of Quraysh. They are the kindest women to their children in their childhood and the more careful women of the property of their husbands. Chapter 13. Having female captives and manumitting one's own slave girl. Narrated Abu Burda's father. Allah's Messenger said, Any man who has a slave girl whom he educates properly, teaches good manners, manumits and marries her, will get a double reward. And if any man of the people of the scriptures believes in his own prophet and then believes in me too, he will also get a double reward. And any slave who fulfills his duty to his master and to his Lord will also get a double reward. Narrated Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, Abraham did not tell lies except three. One of them was, When Abraham passed by a tyrant and his wife, Sarah was accompanying him. Abu Huraira then mentioned the whole narration and said, "The tyrant gave her Hajar." Sarah said, "Allah saved me from the hands of the kafir, infidel, and gave me Hajar to serve me." Abu Huraira added, "That Hajar is your mother, O Banu Ma As-Sama," the Arabs. Narrated on us. The Prophet stayed for 3 days between Khaybar and Medina, and there he consummated his marriage to Safiya bint Huyay. I invited the Muslims to the wedding banquet, in which neither meat nor bread was offered. He ordered for leather dining sheets to be spread, and dates, dried yogurt and butter were laid on it. And that was the Prophet's wedding banquet. The Muslims wondered, is she, Safiya, considered as his wife or his slave girl? Then they said, if he orders her to veil herself, she will be one of the mothers of the believers. But if he does not order her to veil herself, she will be a slave girl. So when the Prophet proceeded from there, he spared her a space behind him on his she-camel, and put a screening veil between her and the people. Chapter 14. The manumission of a slave girl as her maud. Narrated Anas bin Malik. Allah's Messenger manumitted Safiya and regarded her manumission as her maud. Chapter 15. If they be poor, Allah will enrich them out of His bounty. Narrated Sal bin Sa'd as-Sa'idi. A woman came to Allah's Messenger and said, O Allah's Messenger, I have come to give you myself in marriage without maud. Allah's Messenger looked at her. He looked at her carefully and fixed his glance on her, and then lowered his head. When the lady saw that he did not say anything, she sat down. A man from his companions got up and said, O Allah's Messenger, if you are not in need of her, then marry her to me. The Prophet said, Have you got anything to offer? The man said, No, by Allah, O Allah's Messenger. The Prophet said to him, Go to your family and see if you have something. The man went and returned, saying, No, by Allah, I have not found anything. Allah's Apostle said, Go again and look for something, even if it is an iron ring. He went again and returned, saying, No, by Allah, O Allah's Messenger, I could not find even an iron ring. But this is my Isar waist sheet. He had no rida. He added, I give half of it to her. Allah's Messenger said, What will she do with your Isar? If you wear it, she will be naked, and if she wears it, you will be naked. So that man sat down for a long while and then got up to depart. When Allah's Messenger saw him going, he ordered that he be called back. When he came, the Prophet said, How much of the Quran do you know? He said, I know such surah and such surah, counting them. The Prophet said, "Do you know them by heart?" He replied, "Yes." The Prophet said, "Go, I marry her to you for that much of the Quran which you have." Chapter 16. Husband and wife should have the same religion. Narrated Aisha, Abu Hudayfa bin Utbah bin Rabi'a bin Abdi Shams, who had witnessed the Battle of Badr along with the Prophet, adopted Salim as his son, to whom he married his niece, Hind bint al-Walid bin Utbah bin Rabi'a, and Salim was the freed slave of an Ansar woman. Just as the Prophet had adopted Zayd as his son, it was the custom in the pre-Islamic period that if somebody adopted a boy, the people would call him the son of the adoptive father, and he will be the latter's heir. But when Allah revealed the divine verses, called them by the names of their fathers, your freed slaves. 33:5. The adopted persons were called by their fathers' names. The one whose father was not known would be regarded as a mawla and your brother in religion. Later on, Salah bint Suhail bin Amr al-Qurayshi al-Amiri, and she was the wife of Abu Hudayfa bin Utbah, came to the Prophet and said, "O Allah's Messenger, we used to consider Salim as our adopted son, and now Allah has revealed what you know regarding adopted sons." The sub-narrator then mentioned the rest of the narration. Narrated Aisha, Allah's Messenger entered upon Duba bint As-Zubayr and said to her, "Do you have a desire to perform the Hajj?" She replied, "By Allah, I feel sick." He said to her, "Intend to perform Hajj and stipulate something by saying, O Allah, I will finish my ihram at any place where you stop me. Yet I am unable to go further." She was the wife of Al-Miqdad bin al-Aswad. Narrated Abu Hurairah, the Prophet said, "A woman is married for 4 things, yet her wealth, her family status, her beauty, and her religion. So you should marry the religious woman, otherwise you will be a losers." Narrated Sal, a man passed by Allah's Messenger, and Allah's Apostle asked his companions, "What do you say about this man?" They replied, If he asks for a lady's hand, he ought to be given her in marriage, and if he intercedes for someone, his intercessor should be accepted, and if he speaks, he should be listened to." Allah's Messenger kept silent, and then a man from among the poor Muslims passed by, and Allah's Apostle asked them, "What do you say about this man?" They replied, If he asks for a lady's hand in marriage, he does not deserve to be married, and he intercedes for someone, his intercession should not be accepted, and if he speaks, he should not be listened to. Allah's Messenger said, "This poor man is better than so many of the firsts as filling the earth." Chapter 17. The marriage of a poor man with a well-to-do lady. Narrated Udva, that he asked Aisha regarding the verse, "If you fear that you shall not be able to deal justly with the orphans for free," she said, "O my nephew, this verse refers to the orphan girl who is under the guardianship of her guardian, who likes her beauty and wealth and wishes to marry her, and curtails her mahr. Such guardians have been forbidden to marry them unless they do justice by giving them their full mahr." and they have been ordered to marry older than them. The people asked for the verdict of Allah's Messenger. After that, so Allah revealed, they ask your instruction concerning the woman whom you desire to marry. 427. So Allah revealed to them that if the orphan girl had beauty and wealth, they desired to marry her, and for her family status, they can only marry them if they give them their full mahr. And if they had no desire to marry them because of their lack of wealth and beauty, they would leave them and marry other women, so as they used to leave them when they had no interest in them. They were forbidden to marry them when they had such interest, unless they treated them justly and gave them their full mahr. Apostle said, if at all there is evil omen, it is in the horse, the woman, and the house. A lady is to be warded off, and the statement of Allah, truly among your wives and your children there are enemies for you, yet may stop you from the obedience of Allah. 64:14. Chapter 18. What evil omen of a lady is to be warded off. Narrated Abdullah bin Umar. Allah's Messenger said, evil omen is in the woman, the house, and the horse. Narrated Ibn Umar. Evil omen was mentioned before the Prophet. The Prophet said, if there is evil omen in anything, it is in the house, the woman, and the horse. Narrated Sal bin Sa'd. Allah's Messenger said, if at all there is bad omen, it is in the horse, the woman, and the house. Narrated Usama bin Zayd. The Prophet said, after me I have not left any trial more severe to men than women. Chapter 19. About a free lady as the wife of a slave. Narrated Aisha. The free principles were established because of Barira. When Banra was manumitted, she was given the option to remain with her slave husband or not. Allah's Messenger said, the wala of the slave is for the one who manumits the slave. When Allah's Messenger entered the house, he saw a cooking pot on the fire, but he was given bread and meat soup from the soup of the home. The Prophet said, didn't I see the cooking pot on the fire? It was said, that is the meat given in charity to Barira, and you do not eat the things given in charity. The Prophet said, it is an object of charity for Barira, and it is a present for us. Chapter 20. Not to marry more than 4 at a time. Narrated Aisha. Regarding the verse, and if you fear that you shall not be able to deal justly with the orphans, for free. It is about the orphan girl who is in the custody of a man who is her guardian, and he intends to marry her because of her wealth. But he treats her badly and does not manage her property fairly and honestly. Such a man should marry a woman of his liking other than her. 2 or 3 or 4. Prohibited to you for marriage are your foster mothers who suckled you. 4:23. Marriage is prohibited between persons having a foster suckling relationship corresponding to a blood relationship which renders marriage unlawful. Chapter 21. Your foster mothers who gave you suck. Narrated Aisha, the wife of the Prophet, that while Allah's Messenger was with her, she heard a voice of a man asking permission to enter the house of Hafsa. Aisha added, I said, O Allah's Messenger, this man is asking permission to enter your house. The Prophet said, I think he is so and so, naming the foster uncle of Hafsa. Aisha said, if so and so, naming her foster uncle, were living, could he enter upon me? The Prophet said, yes, for foster suckling relations make all those things unlawful which are unlawful through corresponding blood relations. Narrated Ibn Abbas. It was said to the Prophet, won't you marry the daughter of Hamza? He said, she is my foster niece, brother's daughter. Narrated Habiba, daughter of Abu Sufyan. I said, O Allah's Messenger, marry my sister, the daughter of Abu Sufyan. The Prophet said, do you like that? I replied, yes, for even now I am not your only wife, and I like that my sister should share the good with me. The Prophet said, but that is not lawful for me. I said, we have heard that you want to marry the daughter of Abu Salama. He said, you mean the daughter of Salama? I said, yes. He said, even if she were not my stepdaughter, she will be unlawful for me to marry, as she is my foster niece. I and Abu Salama were suckled by Tuwaiba, so you should not present to me your daughters or your sisters in marriage. Narrated Urwa, Tuwaiba was the freed slave girl of Abu Lab, whom he had manumitted, and then she suckled the Prophet. When Abu Lab died, one of his relatives saw him in a dream in a very bad state and asked him, what have you encountered? Abu Lab said, I have not found any rest since I left you, except that I have been given water to drink in the space between his thumb and other fingers, and that is because of my manumitting Tuwaiba. Chapter 22. No suckling is to be carried on after the baby is 2 years old. Narrated Aisha, that the Prophet entered upon her while a man was sitting with her. Signs of answer seemed to appear on his face as if he disliked that. She said, here is my foster brother. He said, be sure as to who is your foster brother, for foster suckling relationship is established only when milk is the only food of the child. Chapter 23. Chapter 23. The milk belongs to the husband. Narrated Aisha, that Afla, the brother of Abu al-Qais, her foster uncle, came asking permission to enter upon her after the verse of al-Hijab, the use of veils by the woman, was revealed. Aisha added, I did not allow him to enter, but when Allah's Messenger came, I told him what I had done, and he ordered me to give him permission. Chapter 24. The witness of a wet nurse. Narrated Uqba bin al-Harith. I married a woman, and then a black lady came to us and said, I have suckled you both, you and your wife. So I came to the Prophet and said, I married so and so, and then a black lady came to us and said to me, I have suckled both of you, but I think she is a liar. The Prophet turned his face away from me, and I moved to face his face and said, "She is a liar." The Prophet said, "How can you keep her as your wife when that lady has said that she has suckled both of you? So abandon, yet divorce her, your wife." Chapter 25. Forbidden to you for marriage are your mothers, your daughters. Ibn Abbas further said, 7 types of marriages are unlawful because of blood relations, and 7 because of marriage relations. Then Ibn Abbas recited the verse. Forbidden for you for marriages are your mothers. 4:23. Abdullah bin Jafar married the daughter and wife of Ali at the same time. They were stepdaughter and mother. Ibn Sirin said, "There is no harm in that." But Al-Hasan al-Basri disapproved of it at first, but then said that there was no harm in it. Al-Hasan bin bin Ali married 2 of his cousins in one night. Jafar bin Said disapproved of that because of it would bring hatred between the 2 cousins, but it is not unlawful, as Allah said, "Lawful to you are all others beyond those mentioned." 4:24. Ibn Abbas said, if somebody commits illegal sexual intercourse with his wife's sister, his wife does not become unlawful for him. And narrated Abu Jafar, if a person commits homosexuality with a boy, then the mother of that boy is unlawful for him to marry. Narrated Ibn Abbas, if one commits illegal sexual intercourse with his mother-in-law, then his married relation to his wife does not become unlawful. Abu Nasr reported to have said that Ibn Abbas, in the above case, regarded his marital relation to his wife unlawful, but Abu Nasr is not known well for hearing hadith from Ibn Abbas. Imran bin Hussein, Jabir bin Said, Al-Hasan and some other Iraqis are reported to have judged that his marital relations to his wife would be unlawful. In the above case, Abu Hurairah said, the marital relation to one's wife does not become unlawful except if one has had sexual intercourse with her mother. Ibn al-Musayyab, Urwa and As-Sudi allows such person to keep his wife. Ali said, his marital relations to his wife does not become unlawful. Chapter 26. Your stepdaughters under your guardianship, born of your wives. Narrated Habiba, I said, O Allah's Messenger, do you like to have my sister, the daughter of Abu Sufyan? The Prophet said, what shall I do with her? I said, marry her. He said, do you like that? I said, yes, for even now I am not your only wife, so I like that my sister should share you with me. He said, she is not lawful for me to marry. I said, we have heard that you want to marry. He said, the daughter of Salama. I said, yes. He said, even if she were not my stepdaughter, she should be unlawful for me to marry, for Tuwaiba suckled me and her father, Abu Salama, so you should neither present your daughters nor your sisters to me. Chapter 27. It is prohibited to have 2 sisters in wedlock at the same time. Narrated Habiba, I said, O Allah's Messenger, marry my sister, the daughter of Abu Sufyan. He said, do you like that? I said, yes, for even now I am not your only wife, and the most beloved person to share the good with me is my sister. The Prophet said, but that is not lawful for me, yet to be married to 2 sisters at that time. I said, O Allah's Messenger, by Allah, we have heard that you want to marry Dura, the daughter of Abu Salama. He said, you mean the daughter of Salama? I said, yes. He said, by Allah, even if she were not my stepdaughter, she will not be lawful for me to marry, for she is my foster niece. For Tuwaiba has suckled me, and Abu Salama, so you should neither present your daughters nor your sisters to me. Chapter 28. A woman should not marry a man already married to her paternal aunt. Narrated Jabir. Allah's Messenger forbade that a woman should be married to man along with a paternal or maternal aunt. Narrated Abu Hurairah. Allah's Messenger said, a woman and a paternal aunt should not be married to the same man, and similarly, a woman and her maternal aunt should not be married to the same man. Narrated Abu Hurairah. The Prophet forbade that a woman should be married to a man along with her paternal aunt or with her maternal aunt at the same time. As-Sudi, the sub-narrator, said, there is a similar order for the paternal aunt of the father of one's wife. For Urwa told me that Aisha said, what is unlawful because of blood relations is also unlawful because of the corresponding foster suckling relations. Chapter 29. Ash-Shighar, exchange of daughters or sisters in marriage without paying mahr. Narrated Ibn Umar. Allah's Messenger forbade Ash-Shighar, which means that somebody marries his daughter to somebody else, and the latter marries his daughter to the former without paying mahr. Chapter 30. Is it permissible for a woman to present herself for marriage to somebody? Narrated Hisham's father. Kavla bint Hakim was one of those ladies who presented themselves to the Prophet for marriage. Aisha said, doesn't a lady feel ashamed for presenting herself to a man? But when the verse, O Muhammad, you may postpone the turn of any of them your wives that you please, 33:51, was revealed, Aisha said, O Allah's Messenger, I do not see but that your Lord hurries in pleasing you. Chapter 31. The marriage of Murim. Narrated Ibn Abbas. The Prophet got married while he was in the state of Iram. Chapter 32. Allah's Messenger says prohibited Nikah al-Mutta lately. Narrated Ali. I said to Ibn Abbas, during the battle of Khaybar, the Prophet forbade Nikah al-Mutta and the eating of donkey's meat. Narrated Abu Jamrah. I heard Ibn Abbas giving a verdict when he was asked about mutta with the woman, and he permitted it Nikah al-Mutta, on that a freed slave of his said to him, that is only when it is very badly needed and women are scarce. On that Ibn Abbas said, yes. Narrated Jabir bin Abdullah and Salama bin al-Aqwa. While we were in an army, Allah's Messenger came to us and said, you have been allowed to do the mutta marriage, so do it. Salama bin al-Aqwa said, Allah's Messenger said, if a man and a woman agree to marry temporarily, their marriage should last for 3 nights, and if they like to continue, they can do so, and if they want to separate, they can do so. I do not know whether that was only for us or for all the people in general. Abu Abdullah al-Bukhari said, Ali made it clear that the Prophet said the mutta marriage has been cancelled, made unlawful. Chapter 33. A woman can present herself to a righteous man for marriage. Narrated Tabit al-Banani. I was with Anas while his daughter was present with him. Anas said, a woman came to Allah's apostle and presented herself to him, saying, O Allah's messenger, have you any need for me? Yet would you like to marry me? Thereupon Anas's daughter said, what a shameless lady she was. Shame, shame. Anas said, she was better than you. She had a liking for the Prophet, so she presented herself for marriage to him. Narrated Sal bin Sa'd. A woman presented herself to the Prophet for marriage. A man said to him, O Allah's messenger, if you are not in need of her, marry her to me. The Prophet said, what have you got? The man said, I have nothing. The Prophet said to him, go and search for something, even if it were an iron ring. The man went and returned, saying, no, I have not found anything, not even an iron ring. But this is my Isar, waist sheet, and half of it is for her. He had no rida, upper garment. The Prophet said, what will she do with your waist sheet? If you wear it, she will have nothing over her, and if she wears it, you will have nothing over you. So the man sat down, and when he had sat a long time, he got up to leave. When the Prophet saw him leaving, he called him back, or the man was called for him. And he said to the man, how much of the Quran do you know by heart? The man replied, I know such surah and such surah by heart. Naming the surahs, the Prophet said, I have married her to you for what you know of the Quran. Chapter 34. The presentation of one's own daughter or sister for marriage to a religious man. Narrated Abdullah bin Umar. Umar bin al-Khattab said, when Hafsa bint Umar became a widow after the death of her husband, Kunais bin Hudafa as-Sami, who had been one of the companions of the Prophet, and he died at Medina. I went to Uthman bin Affan and presented Hafsa for marriage to him. He said, I will think it over. I waited for a few days, then he met me and said, it seems that it is not possible for me to marry at present. Umar further said, I met Abu Bakr as Siddiq and said to him, if you wish, I will marry my daughter Hafsa to you. Abu Bakr kept quiet and did not say anything to me in reply. I became more angry with him than with Uthman. I waited for a few days, and then Allah's messenger asked for her hand, and I gave her in marriage to him. Afterwards I met Abu Bakr, who said, perhaps you became angry with me when you presented Hafsa to me, and I did not give you a reply. I said yes. Abu Bakr said, nothing stopped me to respond to your offer except that I knew that Allah's apostle had mentioned her, and I never wanted to let out the secret of Allah's messenger. And if Allah's apostle had refused her, I would have accepted her. Narrated Zainab bint Salama. Habiba said to Allah's messenger, we have heard that you want to marry Dura bint Abu Salama. Allah's messenger said, can she be married along with Salama, her mother? Even if I have not married Salama, she would not be lawful for me to marry, for her father is my foster brother. Chapter 35. And there is no sin on you if you make a hint of betrothal or conceal it in yourself. Ibn Abbas said, hint, your intention of marrying is made by saying to the widow, For example, I want to marry and I wish that Allah will make a righteous lady available for me. Al-Qasim said, one may say to the widow, I hold all respect for you, and I am interested in you. Allah will bring you much good, or something similar. Atta said, one should hint his intention, and should not declare it openly. One may say, I have some need, have good tidings. Praise be to Allah, you are fit to remarry. She, the widow, may say in reply, I am listening to what you say, but she should not make a promise. Her guardian should not make a promise to somebody to get her married to him without her knowledge. But if, while still in the iddat period, she makes a promise to marry somebody, and he ultimately marries her, they are not to be separated by divorce. Yet the marriage is valid. Chapter 36. It is permissible to look at a woman before marrying. Narrated Aisha, Allah's Messenger said to me, you were shown to me in a dream, and an angel brought you to me, wrapped in a piece of silken cloth, and said to me, this is your wife. I removed a piece of cloth from your face, and there you were. I said to myself, if it is from Allah, then it will surely be. Narrated Sahl bin Sa'd. A woman came to Allah's Messenger and said, O Allah's Messenger, I have come to you to present myself to you for marriage. Allah's Messenger glanced at her. He looked at her carefully and fixed his glance on her, and then lowered his head. When the lady saw that he did not say anything, she sat down. A man from his companions got up and said, O Allah's Messenger, if you are not in need of her, then marry her to me. The Prophet said, have you got anything to offer? The man said, no, by Allah, O Allah's Messenger. The Prophet said to him, go to your family and try to find something. So the man went and returned, saying, no, by Allah, O Allah's Messenger, I have not found anything. The Prophet said, go again and look for something, even if it were an iron ring. He went and returned, saying, no, by Allah, O Allah's Messenger, I could not find even an iron ring, but this is my isar, waist sheet. He had no wirida, upper garment. He added, I give half of it to her. Allah's Messenger said, what will she do with your isar? If you wear it, she will have nothing over herself, therefore will be naked. And if she wears it, then you will have nothing over yourself thereof. So the man sat for a long period and then got up to leave. When Allah's Messenger saw him leaving, he ordered that he call back. When he came, the Prophet asked him, how much of the Quran do you know by heart? The man replied, I know such surah and such surah, and such surah, naming the surahs. The Prophet said, can you recite it by heart? He said, yes. The Prophet said, go, I'll let you marry her for what you know of the Quran as her mar. Chapter 37. Whoever said, a marriage is not valid except through the wali. Narrated Urwa bin As-Zubayr. Aisha, the wife of the Prophet, told him that there were 4 types of marriage during pre-Islamic period of ignorance. One type was similar to that of the present day. A man used to ask somebody else for the hand of a girl under his guardianship or for his daughter's hand and give her mar and then marry her. The second type was that a man would say to his wife after she had become clean from her period, send for so and so and have sexual intercourse with him. Her husband would then keep away from her and would never sleep with her till she got pregnant from the other man with whom she was sleeping. When her pregnancy became evident, he husband would sleep with her if he wished. Her husband did so, yet let his wife sleep with some other man, so that he might have a child of noble breed. Such marriage was called as al-istibdah. Another type of marriage was that a group of less than 10 men would assemble and enter upon a woman, and all of them would have sexual relation with her. If she became pregnant and delivered a child, and some days had passed after delivery, she would send for all of them, and none of them would refuse to come. And when they all gathered before her, she would say to them, "You all know what you have done, and now I have given birth to a child, so it is your child so and so," naming whoever she liked, "and her child will follow him," and he could not refuse to take him. The fourth type of marriage was that many people would enter upon a lady, and she would never refuse anyone who came to her. Those were the prostitutes who used to fix flags at their doors as sign, and he would wished could have sexual intercourse with them. If any one of them got pregnant and delivered a child, then all those men would be gathered for her, and they would call the kaif, persons skilled in recognizing the likeness of a child to his father, to them, and would let the child follow the man whom they recognized as his father, and she would let him adhere to him and be called his son. The man would not refuse all that, but when Muhammad was sent with the truth, he abolished all the types of marriages observed in the pre-Islamic period of ignorance, except the type of marriage the people recognize today. Narrated Aisha, as regards the verse and about what is recited unto you in the book concerning orphan girls, to whom you give not the prescribed portions, and yet whom you desire to marry. 427. This verse is about a female orphan who is under the guardianship of a man, with whom she shares her property, and he has more right over her than anybody else, but does not like to marry her, so he prevents her from marrying somebody else, lest he should share the property with him. Narrated Abdullah bin Umar, when Hafsa, Umar's daughter, became a widow because of the death of her husband, Ibn Hudafa, As-Sami, who was one of the companions of the Prophet, and the one of the Badr warriors, and died at Medina, Umar said, "I met Uthman bin Affan, and gave him an offer, saying, 'If you wish, I will marry Hafsa to you.' He said, 'I will think it over.' I waited for a few days, and then he met me and said, 'I have made up my mind not to marry at present.' Umar added, 'Then I met Abu Bakr and said to him, If you wish, I will marry Hafsa to you.'" Narrated Al-Hassan, concerning the verse, "Do not prevent them," 232. Makil bin Yasar told me that it was revealed in his connection. He said, "I married my sister to a man and he divorced her, and when her days of Iddah, 3 menstrual periods, were over, the man came again and asked for her hand, but I said to him, I married her to you and made her your bed your wife, and favored you with her, but you divorced her. Now you come back to ask for her hand again? No, by Allah, she will never go back to you again." That man was not a bad man, and his wife wanted to go back to him. So Allah revealed this verse, "Do not prevent them." 232. So I said, "Now I will do it, let her go back to him, O Allah's Messenger." So he married her to him again. Chapter 38. If the guardian himself is the suitor. Narrated Aisha. Regarding his statement, they ask your instruction concerning the woman. Say Allah instructs you about them. 427. It is about the female orphan who is under the guardianship of a man with whom she shares her property, and he does not want to marry her and dislikes that someone else should marry her, lest he should share the property with him, so he prevents her from marrying. So Allah forbade such a guardian to do so, yet to prevent her from marrying. Narrated Sahl bin Sa'd. While we were sitting in the company of the Prophet, a woman came to him and presented herself for marriage to him. The Prophet looked at her, lowering his eyes and raising them, but did not give a reply. One of his companions said, "Marry her to me, O Allah's Messenger." The Prophet asked him, "Have you got anything?" He said, "I have got nothing." The Prophet said, "Not even an iron ring?" He said, "Not even an iron ring. But I will tear my garment into 2 halves and give her one half and keep the other half." The Prophet said, "No, do you know some of the Quran by heart?" He said, "Yes." The Prophet said, "Go, I have agreed to marry her to you with what you know of the Quran as her mahr." Chapter 39. Giving one's young children in marriage. Narrated Aisha, that the Prophet married her when she was 6 years old, and he consummated his marriage when she was 9 years old, and then she remained with him for 9 years, yet till his death. Chapter 40. The marrying of a daughter by her father to a ruler. Narrated Aisha, that the Prophet married her when she was 6 years old, and he consummated his marriage when she was 9 years old. Hisham said, "I have been informed that Aisha remained with the Prophet for 9 years, yet till his death." Chapter 41. The ruler is regarded as a guardian. Narrated Sahl bin Sa'd. A woman came to Allah's Messenger and said, "I present myself to you for marriage." She stayed for a long while. Then a man said, "If you are not in need of her, then marry her to me." The Prophet said, "Have you got anything in order to pay her more?" He said, "I have nothing with me except my Isar waist sheet." The Prophet said, "If you give her your Isar, you will have no Isar to wear, so go and search for something." He said, "I could not find anything." The Prophet said, "Try to find something, even if it were an iron ring." But he was not able to find even that. The Prophet said to him, "Do you memorize something of the Quran?" "Yes," he said. "Search surah and search surah," naming those surahs. The Prophet said, "We have married her to you for what you know of the Quran by heart." Chapter 42. The father of the guardian cannot give a virgin or matroon in marriage without their consent. Narrated Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, "A matroon should not be given in marriage except after consulting her, and a virgin should not be given in marriage except after her permission." The people asked, "O Allah's Messenger, how can we know her permission?" He said, "Her silence indicates her permission." Narrated Aisha. I said, "O Allah's Messenger, a virgin feels shy." He said, "Her consent is expressed by her silence." Chapter 43. If a man gives his daughter in marriage while she is averse to it, then such marriage is invalid. Narrated Kansa bint Kidam al-Ansariya, that her father gave her in marriage when she was a matroon, and she disliked that marriage, so she went to Allah's Messenger, and he declared that marriage invalid. Narrated Abdur Rahman bin Yazid and Maijami bin Yazid, the same hadith above. A man called Kidam married a daughter of his to somebody against her consent. If you fear that you should not be able to deal justly with the orphan girls, then marry other women of your choice for free. And if somebody says to the guardian of a woman, marry me to so and so, and the guardian remained silent or said to him, what have you got? And the other said, I have so much and so much more, or kept quiet. And then the guardian said, I have married her to you, then the marriage is valid, legal. This narration was told by Saul on the authority of the prophet. Chapter 44. The giving of an orphan girl in marriage. Narrated Udva bin As-Zubayr, that he asked Aisha, saying to her, O mother, in what connection was this verse revealed? If you fear that you shall not be able to deal justly with orphan girls to the end of the verse, that your right hands possess for free. Aisha said, O my nephew, it was about a female orphan under the protection of her guardian, who was interested in her beauty and wealth, and wanted to marry her with a little of or reduced mahr. So such guardians were forbidden to marry female orphans unless they deal with them justly and give their full mahr, and they were ordered to marry a woman other than them. Aisha added, later the people asked Allah's messenger for instructions, and then Allah revealed, they ask your instruction concerning the woman, and yet whom you desire to marry. 427. So Allah revealed to them in this verse that if a female orphan had wealth and beauty, they desired to marry her and were interested in her noble descent and the reduction of her mahr. But if she was not desired by them because of her lack in fortune and beauty, they left her and married some other woman. So as they used to leave her when they had no interest in her, they had no right to marry her if they had the desire to do so, unless they deal justly with her and gave her a full amount of mahr. Chapter 45. If the suitor says, marry me to so and so, and the guardian says, I have married her to you for such mahr. Narrated Saul. A woman came to the Prophet and presented herself to him for marriage. He said, I am not in need of a woman these days. Then a man said, O Allah's messenger, marry her to me. The Prophet asked him, what have you got? He said, I have got nothing. The Prophet said, give her something, even an iron ring. He said, I have got nothing. The Prophet asked him, how much of the Quran do you know by heart? He said, so much and so much. The Prophet said, I have married her to you for what you know of the Quran. Chapter 46. None should ask for the hand of a lady who is already engaged to his brother, Muslim. Narrated Ibn Umar. The Prophet decreed that one should not try to cancel a bargain already agreed upon between some other persons by offering a bigger price, and a man should not ask for the hand of a girl who is already engaged to his Muslim brother unless the first suitor gives her up or allows him to ask for her hand. Narrated Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, beware of suspicion about others, as suspicion is the falsest talk, and do not spy upon each other, and do not listen to the evil talk of the people about others' affairs, and do not have enmity with one another, but be brothers, and none should ask for the hand of a girl who is already engaged to his Muslim brother, but one should wait till their first suitor marries her or leaves her. Chapter 47. The meaning of the cancelling of the engagement. Narrated Abdullah bin Umar. When Hafsa became a widow, Umar said, I met Abu Bakr and said to him, if you wish, I will marry Hafsa bint Umar to you. I waited for a few days, then Allah's messenger asked for her hand. Later Abu Bakr met me and said, nothing stopped me from returning to you concerning your offer, except that I knew that Allah's messenger had mentioned his wish to marry her, and I could never let out the secret of Allah's messenger. If he had left her, I would have accepted her. Chapter 48. Al-Khutbah for Nikah. Narrated Ibn Umar. Two men came from the east and delivered speeches, and the Prophet said, some eloquent speech has the influence of magic, e.g. some people refuse to do something and then a good eloquent speaker addresses them, and then they agree to do that very thing after his speech. Chapter 49. Beating the tambourine during marriage ceremony and the wedding banquet. Narrated Arabi. The daughter of Muawid bin Afra. After the consummation of my marriage, the Prophet came and sat on my bed as far from me as you are sitting now, and our little girls started beating the tambourines and reciting eloquent verses mourning my father who had been killed in the Battle of Badr. One of them said, among us is a prophet who knows what will happen tomorrow. On that the Prophet said, leave this saying and keep on saying the verses which you had been saying before. Chapter 50. And give to the woman their mar with a good heart. Narrated Anas. Abdurrahman bin Auf married a woman and gave her gold equal to the weight of a date stone as mar. When the Prophet noticed the signs of cheerfulness of the marriage on his face and asked him about it, he said, I have married a woman and gave her gold equal to a date stone in weight as mar. Chapter 51. To marry a lady to a man for what he knows of the Quran. Narrated Sa'al bin Sa'd as-Sa'idi. While I was sitting among the people in the company of Allah's messenger, a woman stood up and said, O Allah's messenger, she has given herself in marriage to you. Please give your opinion of her. The Prophet did not give her any reply. She again stood up and said, O Allah's messenger, she has given herself in marriage to you, so please give your opinion of her. The Prophet did not give her any reply. She again stood up for the third time and said, she has given herself in marriage to you, so give your opinion of her. So a man stood up and said, O Allah's messenger, marry her to me. The Prophet asked him, have you got nothing? And have you got anything? He said, no. The Prophet said, go and search for something, even if it were an iron ring. The man went and searched and then returned saying, I could not find anything, not even an iron ring. Then the Prophet said, do you know something of the Quran by heart? He replied, I know by heart such surah and such surah. The Prophet said, go, I have married her to you for what you know of the Quran by heart. Chapter 52. To give mar in the form of material things. Narrated Sa'al bin Sa'd. The Prophet said to a man, marry even with a mar equal to an iron ring. Chapter 53. The conditions stipulated in marriage contract. Narrated Uqba. The Prophet said, the stipulations most entitled to be abided by are the stipulations most entitled to be abided by are those with which you are given the right to enjoy the woman's private parts, the stipulations of the marriage contract. Chapter 54. Conditions not lawful in the marriage contract. Narrated Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, "It is not lawful for a woman at the time of wedding to ask for the divorce of her sister, yet the other wife of her would-be husband, in order to have everything for herself. For she will take only what has been written for her." Chapter 55. Yellow-colored perfume for a bridegroom. Narrated Anas bin Malik. Abdurrahman bin Auf came to Allah's messenger, and he had marks of sifra, yellow perfume. Allah's messenger asked him about those marks. Abdurrahman bin Auf told him that he had married a woman from the Ansar. The Prophet asked, "How much more did you pay her?" He said, "I paid gold equal to the weight of a date stone." Allah's messenger said to him, "Give a wedding banquet, even if with one sheep." Chapter 56. Narrated Anas. The Prophet offered a wedding banquet on the occasion of his marriage to Zainab and provided a good meal for the Muslims. Then he went out, as was his custom on marrying. He came to the dwelling places of the mothers of the believers, his wives, invoking good on them, and they were invoking good on him. Then he departed and came back, and saw two men still sitting there, so he left again. I do not remember whether I informed him or he was informed by somebody else of their departure. Chapter 57. How to invoke good upon a person who has married recently. Narrated Anas. The Prophet saw the traces of sifra, yellow perfume, on Abdurrahman bin Auf and said, "What is this?" Abdurrahman said, "I have married a woman, and have paid gold equal to the weight of a date stone as her mar." The Prophet said to him, "May Allah bless you, offer a wedding banquet even with one sheep." Chapter 58. The invocation of those women who prepare the bride. Narrated Aisha. When the Prophet married me, my mother came to me and made me enter the house where I saw some woman from the Ansar who said, "May you prosper and have blessings and have good omen." Chapter 59. To consummate the marriage before going on a military campaign. Narrated Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, A prophet among the prophets went for a military expedition and said to his people, "A man who has married a lady and wants to consummate his marriage with her, and he has not done so yet, should not accompany me." Chapter 60. Whoever consummated his marriage with a lady of 9 years of age. Narrated Urwa. The Prophet wrote the marriage contract with Aisha while she was 6 years old, and consummated his marriage with her while she was 9 years old, and she remained with him for 9 years, till his death. Chapter 61. Consummation of marriage during a journey. Narrated Anas. The Prophet stayed for 3 days at a place between Khaybar and Medina, and there he consummated his marriage with Safiya bint Huyay. I invited the Muslims to a banquet which included neither meat nor bread. The Prophet ordered for the leather dining sheets to be spread, and then dates, dried yogurt, and butter were provided over it. And that was the walima banquet of the Prophet. The Muslims asked whether Safiya would be considered as his wife or as a slave girl of what his right hands possessed. Then they said, if the Prophet screens her from the people, then she is the Prophet's wife, but if he does not screen her, then she is a slave girl. So when the Prophet proceeded, he made a place for her on the camel behind him and screened her from people. Chapter 62. Consummation of marriage during the daytime without a marriage procession or lighting of fires. Narrated Aisha. When the Prophet married me, my mother came to me and made me enter the house of the Prophet, and nothing surprised me but the coming of Allah's messenger to me in the forenoon. Chapter 63. The curtains, beddings, and similar tin fins designed for the woman. Narrated Jabir bin Abdullah. Allah's messenger said, did you get anmat? I said, O Allah's messenger, from where can we have anmat? The Prophet said, soon you will have them anmat. Chapter 64. The woman who presents the lady to her husband. Narrated Aisha. That she prepared a lady for a man from the Ansar as his bride, and the Prophet said, O Aisha, haven't you got any amusement during the marriage ceremony as the Ansar liked amusement? Chapter 65. The giving of a present to the bridegroom. Narrated Anas bin Malik. Whenever the Prophet passed by my mother, Sulaym, he used to enter her and greet her. Anas further said, once the Prophet weighed a bridegroom during his marriage with Zainab, Sulaym said to me, let us give a gift to Allah's messenger. I said to her, do it. So she prepared haisa, a sweet dish made from dates, butter and dried yogurt, and she sent it with me to him. I took it to him, and he said, put it down, and he ordered me to call some men whom he named, and to invite whomever I would meet. I did what he ordered me to do, and when I returned, I found the house crowded with people and saw the Prophet keeping his hand over the haisa and saying over it whatever Allah wished him to say. Then he called the men in batches of 10 to eat of it, and he said to them, mention the name of Allah, and each man should eat of the dish the nearest to him. When all of them had finished their meals, some of them left and a few remained there talking, over which I felt unhappy. Then the Prophet went out towards the dwelling places of his wives, and I too went out after him, and told him that those people had left. Then he returned and entered his dwelling place, and let the curtains fall while I was in his dwelling place. And he was reciting the verses, O you who believe, enter not the Prophet's house until leave is given you for a meal, and then not as early as to what for its preparation, but when you are invited, enter, and when you have taken your meals, disperse without sitting for a talk. Verily, such behavior annoys the Prophet, and he would be shy of asking you to go, but Allah is not shy of telling you the truth. 33:53. Abu Uthman said, Anas said, I served the Prophet for 10 years. Chapter 66. To borrow the clothes, etc. for a bride. Narrated Aisha that she borrowed a necklace from Asma and then it got lost, so Allah's messenger sent some people from his companions in search of it. In the meantime, the stated time for a prayer became due, and they offered their prayer without ablution. When they came to the Prophet, they complained about it to him, so the verse regarding Tayammum was revealed. Usaid bin Hudayr said, O Aisha, may Allah bless you with a good reward, for by Allah, never did a difficulty happen in connection with you, but Allah made an escape from it for you, and brought Allah's blessings for the Muslims. Chapter 67. What a man should say on having a sexual intercourse with his wife. Narrated Ibn Abbas. The Prophet said, if any one of you, when having sexual intercourse with his wife, says, Bismillah Allahumma Janibni z shaitan wa janib ish shaitan ma rasak tana. And if it is destined that they should have a child, then Satan will never be able to harm him. Chapter 68. The Walima wedding banquet is obligatory. Narrated Anas bin Malik. I was 10 years old when Allah's messenger arrived at Medina. My mother and aunts used to urge me to serve the Prophet regularly, and I served him for 10 years. When the Prophet died, I was 20 years old, and I knew about the order of Al-Hijab, wailing of ladies, more than any other person when it was revealed. It was revealed for the first time when Allah's messenger had consummated his marriage with Zainab bint Yash. When the day dawned, the Prophet was a bridegroom, and he invited the people to a banquet. So they came, ate, and then all left except a few who remained with the Prophet for a long time. The Prophet got up and went out, and I too went out with him so that those people might leave too. The Prophet proceeded, and so did I, till he came to the threshold of Aisha's dwelling place. Then, thinking that these people have left by then, he returned, and so did I along with him, till he entered upon Zainab, and behold, they were still sitting and had not gone. So the Prophet again went away, and I went away along with him. When we reached the threshold of Aisha's dwelling place, he thought that they had left, and so he returned, and I too returned along with him, and found those people had left. Then the Prophet drew a curtain between me and him, and the verses of Al-Hijab were revealed. Chapter 69. Al-Walima is to be given even with one sheep. Narrated Anas. When Abdurrahman bin Auf married an Ansari woman, the Prophet asked him, how much more did you give her? Abdurrahman said, gold equal to the weight of a date stone. Anas added, one day ere the Prophet and his companions arrived at Medina, the emigrants stayed at the Ansar's houses. Abdurrahman bin Auf stayed at Sa'd bin Rabi's house. Sa'd said to Abdurrahman, I will divide and share my property with you, and will give one of my 2 wives to you. Abdurrahman said, may Allah bless you, your wives and property. I am not in need of that, but kindly show me the way to the market. So Abdurrahman went to the market and traded there, gaining a profit of some dried yogurt and butter, and married an Ansari woman. The Prophet said to him, give a banquet even if with 1 sheep. Narrated Anas. The Prophet did not give a better wedding banquet on the occasion of marrying any of his wives than the one he gave on marrying Zainab, and that banquet consisted of 1 sheep. Narrated Anas. Allah's messenger manumitted Safiya and then married her, and her maud was her manumission, and he gave a wedding banquet with hais, a sort of sweet dish made from butter, cheese and dates. Narrated Anas. The Prophet consummated his marriage with a woman, Zainab, so he sent me to invite men to the meals. Chapter 70. A bigger walima on marrying some wives than the other wives. Narrated Thabit. The marriage of Zainab bint Jahash was mentioned in the presence of Anas, and he said, I did not see the Prophet giving a better banquet on marrying any of his wives than the one he gave on marrying Zainab. He then gave a banquet with 1 sheep. Chapter 71. Walima of less than 1 sheep. Narrated Safiya bint Shayba. The Prophet gave a banquet with 2 muds of barley on marrying some of his wives. 1 mud equals 3 to 4 of a kilogram. Chapter 72. To accept the invitation to a walima. Narrated Abdullah bin Umar. Allah's messenger said, if any one of you is invited to a wedding banquet, he must go for it, accept the invitation. Narrated Abu Musa. The Prophet said, set the captives free, accept the invitation to a wedding banquet and visit the patients. Narrated Al-Bara bin Asib. The Prophet ordered us to do 7 things and forbade us from 7. He ordered us to visit the patients, to follow the funeral procession, to reply to the sneezer, yet say to him, Yarhamuka ilah, may Allah bestow His mercy upon you. If he says, Alhamdulillah, praise be to Allah. To help others to fulfill their oaths, to help the oppressed, to greet whomever one should meet, and to accept the invitation to a wedding banquet. He forbade us to wear golden rings, to use silver utensil, to use mayatir cushions of silk stuffed with cotton and placed under the rider on the saddle. Dekasiya, linen clothes containing silk brought from an Egyptian town, the istibrak, thick silk, and the dibaj, another kind of silk. See Hadith number 539 and 753. Narrated Sal bin Sa'd. Abu Usaid as-Sadi invited Allah's messenger to his wedding party, and his wife, who was the bride, served them on that day. Do you know what drink she gave Allah's messenger? She had soaked some dates for him in water overnight, and when he had finished his meal, she gave him that drink of soaked dates. Chapter 73. If somebody refuses an invitation. Narrated Abu Hurairah. The worst food is that of a wedding banquet to which only the rich are invited while the poor are not invited, and he who refuses an invitation to a banquet disobeys Allah and His Apostle. Chapter 74. Whoever accepted the invitation to a meal of trotters. Narrated Abu Hurairah. The Prophet said, if I am invited to a meal of trotters, I will accept it, and if I am given a trotter as a present, I will accept it. Chapter 75. to accept the invitation to a party. Narrated Nafi. Abdullah bin Umar said, Allah's Messenger said, accept the marriage invitation if you are invited to it. Ibn Umar used to accept the invitation whether to a wedding banquet or to any other party, even when he was fasting. Chapter 76. The attendance of women and children at a wedding party. Narrated Anas bin Malik. Once the Prophet saw some women and children coming from a wedding party, he got up energetically and happily and said, By Allah, you, the Ansar, are the most beloved of all people to me. Chapter 77. Should a person return if he sees something objectionable in the party? Narrated Aisha. The wife of the Prophet, I bought a cushion having on it pictures of animals. When Allah's Messenger saw it, he stood at the door and did not enter. I noticed the sign of disapproval on his face and said, O Allah's Messenger, I repent to Allah and His Apostle. What sin have I committed? Allah's Messenger said, What is this cushion? I said, I bought it for you so that you may sit on it and recline on it. Allah's Messenger said, The makers of these pictures will be punished on the day of resurrection, and it will be said to them, Give life to what you have created, these pictures. The Prophet added, The angels of mercy do not enter a house in which there are pictures of animals. Chapter 78. The serving of the bride herself for the men at her marriage party. Narrated Saul. When Abu Usaid as-Sa'idi got married, he invited the Prophet and his companions. None prepared the food for them and brought it to them, but his wife, she soaked some dates in water in a stone pot overnight, and when the Prophet had finished his food, she provided him with a drink of soaked dates. Chapter 79. Al-Naki and other non-toxicant drinks at a wedding party. Narrated Sa'al bin Sa'd. Abu Usaid as-Sa'idi invited the Prophet to his wedding party, and his wife served him on that day, and she was the bride. She said, or Sa'al said, Do you know what she soaked for Allah's Messenger? She soaked some dates for him in water in a drinking bowl overnight. Chapter 80. To be polite and kind to the woman. Narrated Abu Huraira. Allah's Messenger said, The woman is like a rib. If you try to straighten her, she will break. So if you want to get benefit from her, do so while she still has some crookedness. Chapter 81. The exhortation of taking care of the woman. Narrated Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, Whoever believes in Allah and the last day should not hurt, trouble his neighbor, and I advise you to take care of the woman, for they are created from a rib, and the most crooked portion of the rib is its upper part. If you try to straighten it, it will break, and if you leave it, it will remain crooked. So I urge you to take care of the woman. Narrated Ibn Umar. During the lifetime of the Prophet, we used to avoid chatting leisurely and freely with our wives, lest some divine inspiration might be revealed concerning us. But when the Prophet had died, we started chatting leisurely and freely with them. Chapter 82. Ward off from yourself and your families a fire whose fuel is men and stones. Narrated Abdullah bin Umar. The Prophet said, Every one of you is a guardian, and every one of you is responsible for his wards. A ruler is a guardian and is responsible for his subjects. A man is a guardian of his family and responsible for them. A wife is a guardian of her husband's house and she is responsible for it. A slave is the guardian of his master's property and is responsible for that. Beware, all you are guardians and are responsible for your wards. Chapter 83. To treat the family in a polite and kind manner. Narrated Aisha. 11 women sat at a place and promised and contracted that they would not conceal anything of the news of their husbands. The first one said, "My husband is like the meat of a slim, weak camel, which is kept on the top of a mountain, which is neither easy to climb nor is the meat fat, so that one might put up with the trouble of fetching it." The second one said, "I shall not relate my husband's news, for I fear that I may not be able to finish his story. For if I describe him, I will mention all his defects and bad traits." The third one said, "My husband is too tall. If I describe him, and he hears of that, he will divorce me, and if I keep quiet, he will keep me hanging, neither divorcing me nor treating me as a wife." The fourth one said, "My husband is moderate in temper, like the night of Tihama, neither hot nor cold. I am neither afraid of him, nor am I discontented with him." The fifth one said, "My husband, when entering the house, is a leopard, sleeps a lot, and when going out is a lion, boasts a lot. He does not ask about whatever is in the house." The sixth one said, "If my husband eats, he eats too much, leaving the dishes empty. And if he drinks, he leaves nothing. If he sleeps, he rolls himself alone in a blanket, and he does not insert his palm to inquire about my feelings." The seventh one said, "My husband is a wrongdoer, or weak and foolish. All the defects are present in him. He may injure your head or your body, or may do both." The eighth one said, "My husband is soft to touch like a rabbit and smells like a sarnob, a kind of good smelling grass." The ninth one said, "My husband is a tall, generous man, wearing a long strap for carrying his sword. His ashes are abundant, yet generous to his guests, and his house is near to the people who would easily consult him." The 10th one said, "My husband is Malik, possessor. And what is Malik? Malik is greater than whatever I say about him. He is beyond and above all praises which can come to my mind. Most of his camels are kept at home, ready to be slaughtered for the guests, and only a few are taken to the pastures. When the camels hear the sound of the lute or the tambourine, they realize that they are going to be slaughtered for the guests." The 11th one said, "My husband is Abu Sa'd." And what is Abu Sa'd? What should I say about him? He has given me many ornaments, and my ears are heavily loaded with them, and my arms have become fat. I have become fat, and he has pleased me, and I have become so happy that I feel proud of myself. He found me with my family, who were mere owners of sheep and living in poverty, and brought me to a respected family, having horses and camels and threshing and purifying grain. Whatever I say, he does not rebuke or insult me. When I sleep till late in the morning, and when I drink water or milk, I drink my fill. The mother of Abu Sa'd, and what may one say in praise of the mother of Abu Sa'd? Her saddlebags were always full of provision, and her house was spacious. As for the son of Abu Sa'd, what may one say of the son of Abu Sa'd? His bed is as narrow as an unsheathed sword, and an arm of a kid of 4 months satisfies his hunger. As for the daughter of Abu Sa'd, she is obedient to her father and to her mother. She has a fat, well-built body, and that arouses the jealousy of her husband's other wife. As for the maid, slave girl of Abisar, what may one say of the maid, slave girl of Abisar? She does not uncover our secrets, but keeps them, and does not waste our provisions, and does not leave the rubbish scattered everywhere in our house. The 11th lady added, one day it so happened that Abisar went out at the time when the milk was being milked from the animals, and he saw a woman who had 2 sons, like 2 leopards, playing with her 2 breasts. On seeing her, he divorced me and married her. Thereafter, I married a noble man who used to ride a fast, tireless horse and keep a spear in his hand. He gave me many things, and also a pair of every kind of livestock, and said, eat of this, O Umsar, and give provision to your relatives. She added, yet all those things which my second husband gave me could not fill the smallest utensil of Abu Usar's. Aisha then said, Allah's messenger said to me, I am to you as Abu Usar was to his wife Umsar. Narrated Urwa. Aisha said, while the Ethiopians were playing with their small spears, Allah's messenger screened me behind him, and I watched that display, and kept on watching till I left on my own. So you may estimate of what age a little girl may listen to amusement. Chapter 84. Advice to a daughter regarding her husband. Narrated Ibn Abbas. I had been eager to ask Umar bin al-Khattab about the 2 ladies from among the wives of the Prophet, regarding whom Allah said, if you 2 wives of the Prophet, namely Aisha and Hafsa, turn in repentance to Allah, your hearts are indeed so inclined to oppose what the Prophet likes. 66:4. Till Umar performed the Hajj, and I too performed the Hajj along with him. On the way, Umar went aside to answer the call of nature, and I also went aside along with him, carrying a tumbler full of water. And when Umar had finished answering the call of nature, I poured water over his hands, and he performed the ablution. Then I said to him, O chief of the believers, who were the 2 ladies from among the wives of the Prophet, regarding whom Allah said, if you 2 wives of the Prophet turn in repentance to Allah, your hearts are indeed so inclined to oppose what the Prophet likes. 66:4. He said, I am astonished at your question, O Ibn Abbas. They were Aisha and Hafsa. Then Umar went on narrating the hadith and said, I and an Ansari neighbor of mine from Bani Umayyah bin Zayd, who used to live in Awali al-Medina, used to visit the Prophet in turn. He used to go one day and I another day. When I went, I would bring him the news of what had happened that day regarding the divine inspiration and other things. And when he went, he used to do the same for me. We, the people of Quraysh, used to have the upper hand over our wives. But when we came to the Ansar, we found that their women had the upper hand over their men. So our women also started learning the ways of the Ansari woman. I shouted at my wife, and she retorted against me, and I disliked that she should answer me back. She said to me, why are you so surprised at my answering you back? By Allah, the wives of the Prophet answer him back, and some of them may leave, does not speak to him throughout the day till the night. The talk scared me, and I said to her, whoever has done so will be ruined. Then I proceeded after dressing myself, and entered upon Hafsa and said to her, does any one of you keep the Prophet angry till night? She said, yes. I said, you are ruined, losing person. Don't you fear that Allah may get angry for the anger of Allah's messenger, and thus you will be ruined? So do not ask more from the Prophet, and do not answer him back, and do not give up talking to him. Ask me whatever you need, and do not be tempted to imitate your neighbor, Aisha, in her manners, for she is more charming than you, and more beloved to the Prophet. Umar added, at that time a talk was circulating among us that the tribe of Ghassan were preparing their horses to invade us. My Ansari companion, on the day of his turn, went to the town and returned to us at night, and knocked at my door violently and asked if I was there. I became horrified and came out to him. He said, today a great thing has happened. I asked, what is it? Had the people of Ghassan come? He said, no, but what has happened is greater and more horrifying than that. Allah's messenger has divorced his wives. Umar added, the Prophet kept away from his wives, and I said, Hafsa is a ruined loser. I had already thought that most probably this divorce would happen in the near future, so I dressed myself and offered the morning prayer with the Prophet, and then the Prophet entered an upper room and stayed there in seclusion. I entered upon Hafsa and saw her weeping. I asked, what makes you weep? Did I not warn you about that? Did the Prophet divorce you all? She said, I do not know. There he is retired alone in the upper room. I came out and sat near the pulpit and saw a group of people sitting around it, and some of them were weeping. I sat with them for a while, but could not endure the situation. So I went to the upper room where the Prophet was and said to a black slave of his, will you get the permission of the Prophet for Umar to enter? The slave went in, talked to the Prophet about it, and then returned saying, I have spoken to the Prophet and mentioned you, but he kept quiet. Then I returned and sat with the group of people sitting near the pulpit, but I could not bear the situation, and once again I said to the slave, will you get the permission for Umar? He went in and returned saying, I mentioned you to him, but he kept quiet. So I returned again and sat with a group of people sitting near the pulpit, but I could not bear the situation, and so I went to the slave and said, will you get the permission for Umar? He went in and returned to me saying, I mentioned you to him, but he kept quiet. When I was leaving, behold, the slave called me saying, the Prophet has given you permission. Then I entered upon Allah's messenger, and saw him laying on a bed made of stalks of date palm leaves, and there was no bedding between it and him. The stalks left marks on his side, and he was leaning on a leather pillow stuffed with date palm fibers. I greeted him, and while still standing I said, O Allah's Apostle, have you divorced your wives? He looked at me and said, no. I said, Allah Akbar, and then while still standing I said, chatting, will you heed what I say, O Allah's Messenger? We the people of Quraysh used to have power over our women, but when we arrived at Medina, we found that the men here were overpowered by their women. The Prophet smiled, and then I said to him, will you heed what I say, O Allah's Messenger? I entered upon Hafsa and said to her, do not be tempted to imitate your companion Aisha, for she is more charming than you and more beloved to the Prophet. The Prophet smiled for a second time. When I saw him smiling, I sat down. Then I looked around his house, and by Allah, I could not see anything of importance in his house except 3 hides. So I said, O Allah's Messenger, invoke Allah to make your followers rich, for the Persians and the Romans have been made prosperous, and they have been given the pleasures of the world, although they do not worship Allah. Thereupon the Prophet sat up as he was reclining and said, Are you of such an opinion, O the son of Al-Khattab? These are people who have received their rewards for their good deeds in this world. I said, O Allah's Messenger, ask Allah to forgive me. Then the Prophet kept away from his wives for 29 days, because of the story which Hafsa had disclosed to Aisha. The Prophet had said, I will not enter upon them, my wives, for 1 month, because of his anger towards them, when Allah had admonished him. So when 29 days had passed, the Prophet first entered upon Aisha. Aisha said to him, O Allah's Messenger, you had sworn that you will not enter upon us for 1 month, but now only 29 days have passed, for I have been counting them one by one. The Prophet said, the present month is of 29 days. Aisha added, then Allah revealed the verses of the option to, and out of all his wives he asked me first, and I chose him. Then he gave option to his other wives, and they said what Aisha had said. 1. The Prophet had decided to abstain from eating a certain kind of food because of a certain event, so Allah blamed him for doing so. Some of his wives were the cause of him taking that decision. Therefore, he deserted them for 1 month. See Quran 66:4. Chapter 85. A woman should not observe Sawm except husband's consent is with her missing hair. Narrated Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, a woman should not fast optional fast except with her husband's permission, if he is at home staying with her. Chapter 86. If a woman deserts her husband's bed. Narrated Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, if a man invites his wife to sleep with him and she refuses to come to him, then the angels send their curses on her till morning. Narrated Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, if a woman spends the night deserting her husband's bed, does not sleep with him, then the angels send their curses on her till she comes back to her husband. Chapter 87. A woman should not allow anyone to enter the house except husband's consent hereto. Narrated Abu Huraira. Allah's Messenger said, it is not lawful for a lady to fast nawafil without the permission of her husband when he is at home, and she should not allow anyone to enter his house except with his permission, and if she spends of his wealth on charitable purposes without being ordered by him, he will get half of the reward. Chapter 88. Narrated Usama. The Prophet said, I stood at the gate of paradise and saw that the majority of the people who entered it were the poor, while the wealthy were stopped at the gate for the accounts. But the companions of the fire were ordered to be taken to the fire. Then I stood at the gate of the fire and saw that the majority of those who entered it were women. Chapter 89. To be unthankful to the husband. Narrated Abdullah bin Abbas. During the lifetime of Allah's Messenger, the sun eclipsed. Allah's Messenger offered the prayer of the eclipse, and so did the people along with him. He performed a long qiyam, standing posture, during which Surat al-Baqarah could have been recited. Then he performed a prolonged bowing, then raised his head and stood for a long time, which was slightly less than that of the first qiyam, and recited Quran. Then he performed a prolonged bowing again, but the period was shorter than the period of the first bowing. Then he stood up and then prostrated. Again he stood up, but this time the period of standing was less than the first standing. Then he performed a prolonged bowing, but of a lesser duration than the first. Then he stood up again for a long time, but for a lesser duration than the first. Then he performed a prolonged bowing, but of lesser duration than the first. And then he again stood up, and then prostrated, and then finished his prayer. By then the sun eclipse had cleared. The prophet then said, "The sun and the moon are two signs among the signs of Allah, and they do not eclipse because of the death of birth of someone. So when you observe the eclipse, remember Allah, offer the eclipse prayer." The people said, "O Allah's Messenger, we saw you stretching your hand to take something at this place of yours. Then we saw you stepping backward." He said, "I saw paradise, or paradise was shown to me, and I stretched my hand to pluck a bunch of grapes, and had I plucked it, you would have eaten of it as long as this world exists. Then I saw the hellfire, and I have never before seen such a horrible sight as that. And I saw that the majority of its dwellers were women." The people asked, "O Allah's Messenger, what is the reason for that?" He replied, "Because of their ungratefulness." It was said, "Do they disbelieve in Allah? Are they ungrateful to Allah?" He replied, "They are not thankful to their husbands, and are ungrateful for the favors done to them. Even if you do good to one of them all your life, when she sees some harshness from you, she will say, 'I have never seen any good from you.'" Narrated Imran. The Prophet said, "I looked at paradise and saw that the majority of its residents were the poor, and I looked at the hellfire and saw that the majority of its residents were women." Chapter 90. Your wife has a right over you. Narrated Abdullah bin Amr bin Alas. Allah's Messenger said, "O Abdullah, have I not been informed that you fast all the day and stand in prayer all night?" I said, "Yes, O Allah's Messenger." He said, "Do not do that. Observe the fast sometimes and also leave the fast at other times. Stand up for the prayer at night and also sleep at night. Your body has a right over you, your eyes have a right over you, and your wife has a right over you." Chapter 91. The woman is a guardian in her husband's house. Narrated Ibn Umar. The Prophet said, "All of you are guardians and are responsible for your wards. The ruler is a guardian and the man is a guardian of his family. The lady is a guardian and is responsible for her husband's house and his offspring. And so all of you are guardians and are responsible for your wards." Chapter 92. Men are protectors and maintainers of women. Narrated Anas. Allah's Messenger took an oath that he would not visit his wives for 1 month, and he sat in an upper room belonging to him. Then on the 29th day he came down. It was said, "O Allah's Messenger, you have taken an oath not to visit your wives for 1 month." He said, "The present month is of 29 days. Chapter 93. The decision of the Prophet was not to share the beds with his wives and to stay away. Narrated Salama. The Prophet took an oath that he will not enter upon some of his wives for 1 month, but when 29 days have elapsed, he went to them in the morning or evening. It was said to him, "O Allah's Prophet, You had taken an oath that you would not enter upon them for 1 month. He replied, The month can be of 29 days. Narrated Ibn Abbas. One morning we saw the wives of the Prophet weeping, and every one of them had her family with her. I went to the mosque and found that it was crowded with people. Then Umar bin al-Khattab came and went up to the Prophet, who was in his upper room. He greeted him, but nobody answered. He greeted again, but nobody answered. Then the gatekeeper called him, and he entered upon the Prophet and asked, Have you divorced your wives? The Prophet said, No, but I have taken an oath not to go to them for 1 month. So the Prophet stayed away from his wives for 29 days and then entered upon them. Chapter 94. The beating of women is disapproved. Narrated Abdullah bin Sama. The Prophet said, None of you should flog his wife as he flogs a slave and then have sexual intercourse with her in the last part of the day. Chapter 95. Not to obey the husband if he orders to do something sinful. Narrated Aisha. An Ansari woman gave her daughter in marriage, and the hair of the latter started falling out. The Ansari woman came to the Prophet and mentioned that to him and said, My daughter's husband, suggested that I should let her wear false hair. The Prophet said, No, don't do that, for Allah sends his curses upon such ladies who lengthen their hair artificially. Chapter 96. If a woman fears cruelty or desertion on her husband's part. Narrated Aisha. Regarding the verse, if a wife fears cruelty or desertion on her husband's part, 428, it concerns the woman whose husband does not want to keep her with him any longer, but wants to divorce her and marry some other lady. So she says to him, Keep me and do not divorce me, and then marry another woman, and you may neither spend on me nor sleep with me. This is indicated by the statement of Allah. There is no blame on them if they arrange an amicable settlement between them both, and such settlement is better. 428. Chapter 97. The coitus interruptus. Narrated Jabir. We used to practice coitus interruptus during the lifetime of Allah's Messenger. Narrated Jabir. We used to practice coitus interruptus while the Quran was being revealed. Jabir added, We used to practice coitus interruptus during the lifetime of Allah's Messenger while the Quran was being revealed. Narrated Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. We got female captives in the war booty and we used to do coitus interruptus with them. So we asked Allah's Messenger about it, and he said, Do you really do that? Repeating the question thrice. There is no soul that is destined to exist, but will come into existence till the day of resurrection. Chapter 98. To draw lots among the wives for a journey. Narrated Al-Qasim. Aisha said that whenever the Prophet intended to go on a journey, he drew lots among his wives, so as to take one of them along with him. During one of his journeys, the lot fell on Aisha and Hafsa. When night fell, the Prophet would ride beside Aisha and talk with her. One night Hafsa said to Aisha, Won't you ride my camel tonight and I ride yours, so that you may see me and I see you in a new situation? Aisha said, Yes, I agree. So Aisha rode, and then the Prophet came towards Aisha's camel, on which Hafsa was riding. He greeted Hafsa and then proceeded beside her till they dismounted on the way. Aisha missed him, and so when they dismounted, she put her legs in the itkid and said, O Lord Allah, send a scorpion or a snake to bite me, for I am not to blame him. The Prophet. Chapter 99. To give up the turn with the husband to one of his other wives. Narrated Aisha, Sauda bint Sama gave up her turn to me, Aisha, and so the Prophet used to give me Aisha both my day and the day of Sauda. Chapter 100. To deal justly between the women wives. Chapter 101. Marrying a virgin while already having a matroon wife. Narrated Anas. The tradition of the Prophet is that if someone marries a virgin and he has already a matroon wife with him, then he should stay with the virgin for 7 days. And if someone marries a matroon and he has already a virgin wife with him, then he should stay with her for 3 days. Chapter 102. Marrying a matroon while already having a virgin wife. Narrated Anas. It is the Prophet's tradition that if someone marries a virgin and he has already a matroon wife, then he should stay for 7 days with her, the virgin, and then by turns. And if someone marries a matroon and he has already a virgin wife, then he should stay with her, the matroon, for 3 days, and then by turns. Chapter 103. Whoever had sexual intercourse with all his wives and then took one bath only. Narrated Anas bin Malik. The Prophet used to pass by have sexual relation with all his wives in one night, and at that time he had 9 wives. Chapter 104. If a man goes to all his wives in one day. Narrated Aisha. Whenever Allah's Messenger finished his Asr prayer, he will enter upon his wives and stay with one of them. One day he went to Hafsa and stayed with her longer than usual. Chapter 105. If a man takes the permission of his wives so as to stay in the house of one of them. Narrated Aisha. That during his fatal ailment, Allah's Messenger used to ask his wives, Where shall I stay tomorrow? Where shall I stay tomorrow? He was looking forward to Aisha's turn, so all his wives allowed him to stay where he wished, and he stayed at Aisha's house till he died there. Aisha added, He died on the day of my usual turn at my house. Allah took him unto him, while his head was between my chest and my neck, and his saliva was mixed with my saliva. Chapter 106. To love some of the wives more than the others. Narrated Ibn Abbas. That Umar entered upon Hafsa and said, O my daughter, do not be misled by the manners of her who is proud of her beauty because of the love of Allah's Messenger. By her he meant Aisha. Umar added, Then I told that to Allah's Messenger, and he smiled on hearing that. Chapter 107. To claim having more things or better qualities than one really has. Narrated Asma. Some ladies said, O Allah's Messenger, my husband has another wife, so it is sinful of me to claim that he has given me what he has not given me, in order to tease her. Allah's Messenger said, The one who pretends that he has been given what he has not been given is just like the false one who wears 2 garments of falsehood. Chapter 108. Al-Ghaira, ye honor, prestige, or self-respect. Narrated Abdullah bin Masud. The Prophet said, There is none having a greater sense of ghira than Allah, and for that he has forbidden the doing of evil actions, illegal sexual intercourse, etc. There is none who likes to be praised more than Allah does. Narrated Aisha. Allah's Messenger said, O followers of Muhammad, There is none who has a greater sense of ghira, self-respect, than Allah. So he has forbidden that his slave commits illegal sexual intercourse, or his slave girl commits illegal sexual intercourse. O followers of Muhammad, if you but knew what I know, you would laugh less and weep more. Narrated Asma. I heard Allah's Messenger saying, there is none having a greater sense of ghira, self-respect, than Allah, and narrated Abu Hurairah that he heard the Prophet saying the same. Narrated Abu Hurairah. The Prophet said, Allah has a sense of ghira, and Allah's sense of ghira is provoked when a believer does something which Allah has prohibited. Narrated Asma bint Abu Bakr. When As-Zubayr married me, he had no real property, or any slave, or anything else except a camel which drew water from the well, and his horse. I used to feed his horse with fodder, and drew water and sewed the bucket for drawing it, and prepared the dough, but I did not know how to bake bread. So our Ansari neighbors used to bake bread for me, and they were honorable ladies. I used to carry the date stones on my head from Zubayr's land, given to him by Allah's Messenger, and this land was 2 farsakh, about 2 miles from my house. One day while I was coming with the date stones on my head, I met Allah's Messenger along with some Ansari people. He called me and then directing his camel to kneel down, said Ik, so as to make me ride behind him on his camel. I felt shy to travel with the man and remembered As-Zubayr and his sense of ghira, as he was one of those people who had the greatest sense of ghira. Allah's Messenger noticed that I felt shy, so he proceeded. I came to As-Zubayr and said, I met Allah's Messenger while I was carrying a load of date stones on my head, and he had some companions with him. He made his camel kneel down so that I might ride, but I felt shy in his presence and remembered your sense of ghira. See the glossary. On that, As-Zubayr said, by Allah, you're carrying the date stones, and you being seen by the Prophet in such a state is more shameful to me than you riding with him. I continued serving in this way till Abu Bakr sent me a servant to look after the horse, whereupon I felt as if he had set me free. Narrated Anas. While the Prophet was in the house of one of his wives, one of the mothers of the believers sent me a meal in a dish. The wife at whose house the Prophet was struck the hand of the servant. The wife at whose house the Prophet was struck the hand of the servant, causing the dish to fall and break. The Prophet gathered the broken pieces of the dish and then started collecting on them the food which had been in the dish, and said, Your mother, my wife, felt jealous. Then he detained the servant till a sound dish was brought from the wife at whose house he was. He gave the sound dish to the wife whose dish had been broken and kept the broken one at the house where it had been broken. Narrated Jabir. The Prophet said, I entered paradise and saw a palace and asked, whose palace is this? They, the angels, said, This palace belongs to Umar bin al-Khattab. I intended to enter it, and nothing stopped me except my knowledge about your sense of ghira, self-respect, O Umar. Umar said, O Allah's Messenger, let my father and mother be sacrificed for you. O Allah's Prophet, how dare I think of my ghira, self-respect, being offended by you. Narrated Abu Hurairah. While we were sitting with Allah's Messenger, He, Allah's messenger, said, "While I was sleeping, I saw a woman performing ablution beside a palace. I asked, 'Whose palace is this?' It was said, 'This palace belongs to Umar.' Then I remembered his sense of ghira and returned. On that, Umar started weeping in that gathering and said, 'O Allah's messenger, how dare I think of my self-respect being offended by you?'" Chapter 109. The jealousy of women and their anger. Narrated Aisha, that Allah's messenger said to her, "I know when you are pleased with me or angry with me." I said, "Whence do you know that?" He said, "When you are pleased with me, you say, 'No, by the Lord of Muhammad,' but when you are angry with me, then you say, 'No, by the Lord of Abraham.'" Thereupon I said, "Yes, you are right, but Allah, O Allah's messenger, I need nothing but your name." Narrated Aisha, I never felt so jealous of any wife of Allah's messenger as I did of Khadija, because Allah's messenger used to remember and praise her too often, and because it was revealed to Allah's messenger that he should give her, Khadija, the glad tidings of her having a palace of Kasab in paradise. Chapter 110. Attempt to prevent the daughter's jealousy. Narrated Al-Miswar bin Makrama. I heard Allah's messenger, who was on the pulpit, saying, "Banu Hisham bin al-Mughira have requested me to allow them to marry their daughter to Ali bin Abu Talib, but I don't give permission and will not give permission unless Ali bin Abi Talib divorces my daughter in order to marry their daughter, because Fatima is a part of my body and I hate what she hates to see, and what hurts her hurts me." Chapter 111. Men will decrease and women will increase. Narrated Anas. I will narrate to you a hadith I heard from Allah's messenger, and none other than I will tell you of it. I heard Allah's messenger saying, "From among the portents of the hour are the following: religious knowledge will be taken away, general ignorance in religious matter will increase, illegal sexual intercourse will prevail, drinking of alcoholic drinks will prevail, men will decrease in number and women will increase in number, so much so that 50 women will be looked after by one man." Chapter 112. A man should not stay with a woman in seclusion. Narrated Uqba bin Amir. Allah's messenger said, "Beware of entering upon the ladies." A man from the Ansar said, "Allah's apostle, what about Al-Hamu, the in-laws of the wife, the brothers of her husband, or his nephews, etc.?" The Prophet replied, "The in-laws of the wife are death itself." Narrated Ibn Abbas. The Prophet said, "No man should stay with a lady in seclusion except in the presence of a du muram." A man stood up and said, "O Allah's messenger, my wife has gone out intending to perform the Hajj, and I have been enrolled in the army for such and such campaign." The Prophet said, "Return and perform the Hajj with your wife." Chapter 113. Private meeting between a man and a woman not secluded from the people. Narrated Anas bin Malik. An Ansari woman came to the Prophet, and he took her aside and said to her, "By Allah, you Ansar are the most beloved people to me." Chapter 114. Effeminate men should not enter upon a woman. Narrated Salama, that while the Prophet was with her, there was an effeminate man in the house. The effeminate man said to Salama's brother, Abdullah bin Abi Umayyah, if Allah should make you conquer Taif tomorrow, I recommend that you take the daughter of Gailan in marriage, for she is so fat that she shows 4 folds of flesh when facing you, and 8 when she turns her back." Thereupon the Prophet said to us, "This effeminate man should not enter upon you anymore." Chapter 115. The looking of a woman at the Ethiopians and the like. Narrated Aisha, the Prophet was screening me with his rida garment covering the upper part of the body, while I was looking at the Ethiopians who were playing in the courtyard of the mosque. I continued watching till I was satisfied. So you may deduce from this event how a little girl who has not reached the age of puberty, who is eager to enjoy amusement, should be treated in this respect. Chapter 116. The going out of women for their needs. Narrated Aisha, once Sada bint Sama went out at night for some need, and Umar saw her, and recognizing her, he said to her, "By Allah, O Sada, you cannot hide yourself from us." So she returned to the Prophet and mentioned that to him, while he was sitting in my dwelling taking his supper, and holding a bone covered with meat in his hand. Then the divine inspiration was revealed to him. And when that state was over, he, the Prophet, was saying, "O woman, you have been allowed by Allah to go out for your needs." Chapter 117. The permission taken by a woman from her husband to go to the mosque. Narrated Salim's father, the Prophet said, "If the wife of any one of you asks permission to go to the mosque, he should not forbid her." Chapter 118. Visiting or looking at a woman having foster suckling relations. Narrated Aisha, my foster uncle came and asked permission to enter, but I refused to admit him till I asked Allah's Apostle about that. He said, "He is your uncle, so allow him to come in." I said, "O Allah's Messenger, I have been suckled by a woman and not by a man." Allah's Messenger said, "He is your uncle, so let him enter upon you." And that happened after the order of Al-Hijab, compulsory wailing, was revealed. All things which became unlawful because of blood relations are unlawful because of the corresponding foster suckling relations. Chapter 119. A woman should not look at or touch the body of another woman to describe to her husband. Narrated Abdullah bin Masud, the Prophet said, "A woman should not look at or touch another woman to describe her to her husband in such a way as if he was actually looking at her." Narrated Abdullah, the Prophet said, "A woman should not look at or touch another woman to describe her to her husband in such a way as if he was actually looking at her." Chapter 120. I will go round all my wives tonight. Narrated Abu Huraira, the Prophet Solomon, son of the Prophet David, said, "Tonight I will go around and have sexual relations with 100 women, my wives, every one of whom will deliver a male child, who will fight in Allah's cause." On that an angel said to him, "Say, if Allah will," but Solomon did not say it and forgot to say it. Then he had sexual relations with them, but none of them delivered any child except one who delivered a half person. The Prophet said, if Solomon had said, "If Allah will," Allah would have fulfilled his above desire, and that saying would have made him more hopeful. Chapter 121. If a man is away for a long time, he should not enter his house at night. Narrated Jabir bin Abdullah, The Prophet disliked that one should go to one's family at night on returning from a journey. Narrated Jabir bin Abdullah. Allah's Messenger said, when any one of you is away from his house for a long time, he should not return to his family at night. Chapter 122. Seeking to beget children. Narrated Jabir. I was with Allah's Messenger in a ghazwa, and when we returned, I wanted to hurry while riding a slow camel. A rider came behind me. I looked back and saw that the rider was Allah's Messenger. He said to me, "What makes you in such a hurry?" I replied, "I am newly married." He said, "Did you marry a virgin or a matroon?" I replied, "Not a virgin but a matroon." He said, "Why didn't you marry a young girl with whom you could play and who could play with you?" Then when we approached Medina and were going to enter it, the Prophet said, "Wait till you enter your homes at night in the first part of the night, so that the ladies with unkept hair may comb their hair, and those whose husbands have been absent for a long time may shave their pubic hair." The sub-narrator Hashim said, "A reliable narrator told me that the Prophet added in this hadith, 'Seek to beget children, O Jabir.'" Narrated Jabir bin Abdullah. The Prophet said, "If you enter your town at night after coming from a journey, do not enter upon your family till the woman whose husband was absent from the house shaves her pubic hair, and the woman with unkempt hair combs her hair." Allah's Messenger further said, "O Jabir, seek to have offspring. Chapter 123. The woman should shave her pubic hair and should comb their hair. Narrated Jabir bin Abdullah. We were with the Prophet in Ghazwa, and when we returned and approached Medina, I wanted to hurry while riding a slow camel. A rider overtook me and pricked my camel with a spear which he had, whereupon my camel started running as fast as any other fast camel you may see. I looked back, and behold, the rider was Allah's Messenger. I said, "O Allah's Messenger, I am newly married." He asked, "Have you got married?" I replied, "Yes." He said, "A virgin or a matroon?" I replied, "Not a virgin, but a matroon." He said, "Why didn't you marry a young girl so that you could play with her and she with you?" When we reached near Medina and were going to enter it, the Prophet said, Wait till you enter your home early in the night, so that the lady whose hair is unkept may comb her hair, and that the lady whose husband has been away may shave her pubic hair." Chapter 124. And not to reveal their adornments except to their husbands. Narrated Abu Hasim. The people differed about the type of treatment which had been given to Allah's Messenger on the day of the Battle of Uhud, so they asked Sal bin Sa'd as-Sa'id, who was the only surviving companion of the Prophet at Medina. He replied, "Nobody is left at Medina who knows it better than I." Fatima was washing the blood off his face, and Ali was bringing water in his shield, and then a mat of date palm leaves was burnt, and the ash was inserted into the wound. Chapter 125. And those among you who have not come to the age of puberty. Narrated Abdur Rahman bin Abis. I heard Ibn Abbas answering a man who asked him, "Did you attend the prayer of Eid al-Adha or Eid al-Fitr with Allah's Messenger?" Ibn Abbas replied, "Yes, and had it not been for my close relationship with him, I could not have offered it. That was because of his young age. Ibn Abbas further said, Allah's Messenger went out and offered the Eid prayer and then delivered the sermon. Ibn Abbas did not mention anything about the Adhan, the call for prayer, or the Iqamah. He added, then the Prophet went to the women and instructed them and gave them religious advice and ordered them to give alms, and I saw them reaching out their hands to their ears and necks to take off the earrings and necklaces, etc., and throwing it towards Bilal. Then the Prophet returned with Bilal to his house. Chapter 126. The man's poking his daughter in the flank while admonishing her. Narrated Aisha, Abu Bakr admonished me and poked me with his hands in the flank, and nothing stopped me from moving at that time except the position of Allah's Messenger, whose head was on my thigh.